Wait,
Yeah, I just grabbed the link.
have I got the right? I think so.
All right, links in
Cool.
tutoring.
Yep.
Right, and I know you have a time window of greater availability. So
Yeah.
my general thought was 2 hours a day for the first week, and then 1 hour a day after that for the 2 months. And then after that, maybe like 1 hour a month.
Yep. Yep. No, that sounds good. I feel like yeah, if I don't become yeah, more able to do this on my own, then we've sort of not really met the goal.
Yeah, and then after the 2 months when you're busier, as a rough goal, if you could do 2 hours a day of this kind of stuff, 5 days a week, in order to continue it yourself, I think that would be reasonable. And try to
I think
fit
that's
that into your schedule long term.
yeah, no, I think that is reasonable.
Okay. So yeah, I wanted to uh, share my rough thoughts and see if you had any objections or other ideas, because there's flexibility.
Yep. No, I think that's a reasonable way to go forward. Um, yeah, particularly I've noticed like last night, um, doing the grammar stuff and going through the archives and things. There's a fair amount. Uh, like a lot of it can be quite self-driven, but it's hard to, I guess, dedicate the amount of time and energy needed to get up to speed with how to do that. Um, like it sort of surprised me a bit in that, yeah, how much there it seemed like there was to do that I didn't realize before.
Yeah, the Google group is has some barriers to entry to finding everything and going through it, but there's a lot of content there.
Yep. One of the sort of auxiliary goals I was thinking about with this was to, which I sort of started last night, but was organizing the resources that I was using as I went. So like collecting the past emails where people had done various questions and things, so that there's actually a bit of a library there in future. Because if all my
Yeah.
notes are public anyway, then it sort of makes sense to try and offer that as a resource.
Yes, if people want to organize things and make it easier for future people, that's great.
It occurs to me that it's necessary for FI in that, um, yeah, one of the sort of success criteria you could think about is once high quality thinkers are developed, that they like continue to build the next uh, sort of people coming through, and you can actually have something that's sustainable um, in a BOI sense that way, as opposed to um, yeah, as opposed to not.
Yeah, I've also been getting people to use their blogs a bit more, which results in some groups of more organized stuff people can find.
Yep, I've noticed that recently that um, there's a bunch of blogs. In fact, there was one that I stumbled onto that I haven't been able to find again. So there's yeah, which is sort of good in that there's a lot of content to explore there.
Oh, do you know the name of the...
So I feel like the name of the guy was I think looking for group was it was like a 7-letter name and LFG was at the
Oh,
start.
Hero Looking for Group. That is Gavin.
Um, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Um, yep, that explains it. I've seen yeah Gavin in some logs that I was reading.
Okay, another topic is burnout. I don't know how you manage that in general or how you're feeling.
I'm feeling so there was a period in the middle of the week where I was feeling um yeah like I might need to sort of manage that a bit more. I'm feeling a lot more decent now. Like particularly in terms of like work logging stuff. Just like a lot more under control of various goals and things that I have. So, and that's helping a lot. So then I can actually start taking things in a more bite-sized and manageable way. Um, yeah. So I'm sort of conscious of it. I don't have particularly good methods of dealing with it, I think, besides just sort of like backing off in general. But but yeah, I feel like I'm less prone to burnout when I'm doing things that I feel are like meaningful and engaging and so on. And it's when they stop feeling like that that they become more of an issue. So,
Okay.
and that part's not an issue at the moment.
Okay, so what did you do since last session?
So a lot of it was spent on grammar stuff. Um, and so nearly at the end of the third sort of thing, I've done a few other things in the meantime. Oops. So there was like some extra grammary things that I focused on. Um, uh, there was one actually. Um, yeah, so this gave me a lot of. I just actually ended up moving on. It wasn't that I think that I got the structure wrong, but that I didn't know what that was. And then
Yeah,
I
that
started to.
that is a hard word.
Um, yeah, and it's a rabbit hole for sure. I did find an interesting article about it though, that had this line in it that was quite good. And that don't implant arbitrary rules of grammar because yeah, you needn't implant them. Implants are notorious for falling out when you need them.
There is a lot of discussion of that both in my Grammar Gumroad stuff and
hmm
also in the FI archives.
Yep. So that's what I felt like with grammar that I'm probably going to need to, or I was thinking about how to practice it more long term, because just on the stuff we were talking about yesterday with building blocks and mastery and so on, like there's a few errors that I keep making. So like this sort of stuff, um, where I'll go over something again and again as opposed to being able to deal with it. So focusing on those things. But I think as long as I'm aware of them, then it's pretty easy to find things to analyze, and then I can focus on the stuff that's like particularly relevant to those issues. The process of like figuring out whether I've made a mistake or not, though. I mean, I guess that's what FI is there for.
Yeah, and the more important thing than whether you got it right is whether you recognize which ones you might be getting wrong. If you can differentiate the ones you're confident about and the ones you're not confident about, and just don't make mistakes on the ones that you are confident about, then that's pretty good.
Yep. Yep. So I feel like the stuff that I'm more confident about is uh I feel like I'm identifying it reasonably well. The stuff that I can deal with pretty quickly, and then other stuff where I take a lot longer. Um, though I posted in reply to one of Anne's emails about some phrases that she found, and it sort of I was different on all accounts, I think. Or not
Okay, do you want to
not
look at
way over
these?
the top, but yeah.
Okay, so the first one, let's see, lat, you're green on the root. You have, okay, I know what this issue is. There was a long discussion of this on FI. So you have us as the subject of let,
Hmm.
Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, as in we're the ones doing the talking, and then the
Well,
talking is modified by
hold
the
on.
way. Oh, yep.
If we're the ones doing the talking, that would be we're the subject of talk. But you have us as the child of let, which means
Oh,
we're the
okay.
ones doing the letting.
Yeah, okay. So we're the ones, yeah, deciding that we're going to talk or giving ourselves permission. Um,
Okay, so first of all, I think this is an imperative statement. I don't know if you've read anything about those, or if they're even in my article.
um, they don't
An
ring a bell. They might
imperative
be.
is a command, like go to bed. Okay, yeah, I mentioned it, but that might be like all there is.
Yeah, I think it's just that one right at the end.
Yeah. So an example of a typical command is go to bed. So in this sentence, what do you think the subject of go is?
You.
Yes, there's an implied you, the person being spoken to, or the group being spoken to.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I think you actually do mention that in more detail, but you just talk about it as a command. Yeah, so there's like walk the dog, and
Oh,
then yeah,
okay.
the subject. Yeah, so you do point it out actually right at the beginning, but you don't call it an imperative at that stage.
Right. So, first thing about this sentence is I think it's a command saying you should let us talk about it in a different way.
So it's not us, it's like the person you're talking, as in, it's the person that you want to engage with the conversation in the sense that I want to talk, you
Yeah.
should also want to talk. That sort of, yep.
Okay, so I think the subject of let is the implied you. So that brings up the question then of what is us.
Um, isn't it like the person speaking and the person that's speaking to?
Right, so one view is that us is the object of let. Um, that would be the first candidate idea. It would be you let us. The other option, which is what Anne did, is she has us as the subject of talk. So she says that the object of let is talk. It's saying you let talk, and then us is attached essentially as a modifier to talk, as the subject of talk.
How would it work as uh, as the object of let? Like, where would the rest of the sentence come in that case? Because it would be like you let us, um, which doesn't seem to make as much sense.
So if that was the object, it'd be here, and then you have the problem of what is talk and what is all the rest.
Yeah,
And
so you'd have to
the
make it.
way people handle this is they call it a special case.
Okay, yep. So we're not doing that.
It's very
It'd be,
commonly taught that way.
it might
But
be good to
yeah,
understand, but yeah, but it's yeah, it's obviously unprincipled.
their answer is basically there's just a bunch of verbs that have two things that come after the verb, like two objects in some sort of way. This comes up with indirect objects, which are a particular category of exception. So Joe hit me the ball. In this sentence, there are two different nouns after the verb. And
Yep.
there's no preposition, there's nothing else to enable that. So the
There
standard
has
answer is this is just a special case, some verbs take a second object.
The alternate is an implied word though, right?
Yes, the more principled answer is that this is a shortcut with an implied word. It really means Joe hit to me the ball, and we just
Yep.
drop the two.
And then we've got a uh,
The shortcut
implied
involves you drop the word and also you swap the order, because normally if you were saying it the full way,
the ball to
it would
me.
be Joe hit the ball to me. We put the preposition at the end.
Yep. No, that makes sense. Um, there was another. I remember, like there was a one of the exercises I did had two nouns as in that sort of position. I can't remember which one though. I should have noted it. But
It definitely comes up. There's another way that two nouns go in a row as well.
oh, I think it was this. I gave him gifts,
Okay, yeah, that is a similar example.
and then to
That is
him
an
we've got
indirect object. So very briefly, the other way this comes up a lot is called appositives. Okay, Hermione Granger, God, a witch at Hogwarts School, is accomplished at spells. So what we have here is noun, noun, and then here's the verb and the rest of the sentence. And the reason you have two nouns in a row is you have commas, and one noun is acting like a modifier on the first noun. It's giving
yep.
extra information or restating it or something, describing it, and this is just a common pattern to have multiple nouns in a row that are different ways of saying the same thing.
Yeah, okay, so they're essentially synonyms in this case, or we're taking them as being the same thing. And so we're sort of combining all of the information into one object or one noun, sorry. To
Yeah,
then yep,
you can tree them with the second one as a child of the first one and treat it as a modifier group, even though it's a noun, because its actual role is a modifier role of giving more info.
yep.
Yeah, so to avoid the special case here, where you just say let takes an extra thing, like three different things under it, you can do what Anne did, which is say that actually us is the subject of talk.
I think that makes more sense now.
There's a long FI discussion about this, with the concept of verbals having subjects rather than only objects, which is not something everyone teaches, but it turned out to be more elegant to look at it that way sometimes.
Yep, that makes sense.
So we're saying let something, and then the something is this entire group. Talk with us as the talker and about as the thing being talked about.
Yep. One thing I did so with regards to the Ayn Rand example, one thing I definitely wasn't sure about is so the thing that
Is
I
that
so
on
I was
here?
it's actually on the it's not on that one, sorry, no. I didn't do either of the more complex ones there, basically because if I got the first two wrong, I figured I should probably figure out why first. Um,
Okay.
the
Okay, Ayn
the
Rand, I seriously think. Yeah, this one.
yeah, oops, you got the screen up. Yeah, so um, it sort of started to make a bit more sense when like with the idea that that when that is omitted, it's just a like it's still implied. And that the true form is always, or the full form is including that. However,
Yes. That is a
uh,
very commonly omitted word.
one of the things that sort of came up in the maybe it confused me more with the idea of that is this like tensed clause, and so the main sort of difference that I could see between them was the way that the entire uh, object, I think, of the thinking is more of a like the entire thing is in the it's harder to say. So the one of the ways you could read it, for example, is like that Ayn Rand is no longer wise but once was. Um, presumably the intent is that she's dead, so that that sort of explains it. The idea of the entire phrase being tensed sort of leans towards that second interpretation as opposed to the first. I'm not sure um, if that's actually right, or
I would
if
not interpret the tense, the was, the it's in the past, as trying to limit her wisdom. I think it's just you need a tense, and saying is for a dead person is like weird. So they just go with
yeah.
the past tense. She was wise while she was alive, but it's not saying like her ideas aren't wise anymore or something.
Hmm.
So for
Um,
the word that, there's actually a trick you can do with it and some of its uses. So this is controversial, but this is a conversion you can do.
yeah. Okay. So uh, you use that is sort of acting like a which or a one type thing, and then it's referring to the remote, um, like now, the one that like it's not next to the next to what it's referring to. Um,
Yeah. So here, that is a pronoun, and this sentence isn't too mysterious. We're just saying we say something and then we make an extra comment about it and refer back to it.
yep.
And my opinion is that these two sentences mean the same thing. That that here has two roles. One, it's similar to the semicolon. We have two clauses now instead of one. And two, it is a pronoun that refers to this stuff.
Yep.
So it's a forward reference instead of a backward reference, which is less common. But it's not too bad because you got the thing being referred to immediately.
Cool.
It's definitely taught in different ways, one of which is simply that it's a subordinator, which creates a subordinate clause, and then the entire subordinate clause is the object of think.
So I mean, I think yeah, that was
Which is a little bit strange because they're trying to say that you have this clause and then it plays a role of a phrase, like a noun phrase.
yeah. No, I think I ended up disagreeing with that. I've got the was here on the same level as think, which seems the better way of doing it. In that, like this is a this like this I seriously think um needs extra stuff to complete it, but it makes sense to be uh
Okay, so one issue with yours is you don't have an object for think.
hmm. That's what I was just got stuck on going through that reasoning just then.
So
Um,
what I would do is put that as the object of think. The word
is
that
it
referring to Ayn Rand as wise.
um can I use it twice? In that if it's acting as a conjunction as well.
Yeah,
Um,
so the word that in this place does two things. It has two roles in the sentence. So it representing it in the tree as two nodes is a convenient way to deal with its double function.
yep.
Because it has the pronoun job and the conjunction job is one way to put it. Another thing you can do is for the root node, you can put a semicolon in brackets.
Oh, like this.
Yeah.
Well, syntax aside.
So either one makes sense, but the semicolon is a reasonable approximation of what role is happening there, what thing is being done there.
Yep. As it's weaker than a conjunction, but linking the two clauses.
Yeah, another option to put there is an and in brackets.
Just that it's an implied and that's dropped.
Yeah.
Well, that's semicolon essentially is the same.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same function, yeah.
Because basically the word that, yeah, on the one hand it's doing the pronoun role, and on the other hand it's doing the and or semicolon type role, which you
Yep.
can represent with the word that itself, but that can be a little confusing than more specifically saying what it's doing.
Cool. Yeah, so I was thinking in regards to, well, I mean, there's a few exercises I haven't done and things, but in essence, I feel like I'm at the point of yeah, like needing that longer, the actual just the practice, getting the last sort of thing, um, and that it's in terms of grammar now is far more about yeah, figuring out how to sustain like a um, longer term incremental improvement via like
Okay.
yeah, submitting the things to. I mean, that was yeah, what it felt like at least.
Yeah, grammar, you can get an overview that's simpler than people think. It's a bit more elegant, like there's just the two main sentence patterns, for example, which is not how other people teach it. They'll have like 5 or 6 for no good reason.
Let's take account of all the special cases.
Yeah, they're barely even special cases though. They'll be like the pattern where there's an object and the pattern where there's no object, and they'll list those separately instead of just saying the object is optional in that pattern. They want to count it as separate patterns. But they'll even do stupid ones like noun, verb, adverb. They're like, if you have no object and there's an adverb, then we're gonna call it a different pattern.
As opposed to just every verb optionally has adverbs, which
Yeah, I
maybe
mean
makes it a little
every
more
sentence can have adverb. Like every single pattern can have adverbs, so it's weird to call them a separate one.
Yep.
Okay, so your email had a second one you looked
Oh
at?
yeah, the second. Yeah. So this was you can find yeah.
And is it this one? Find
So
work.
I think the implied words were um like as in both of these sentences needed some stuff that I didn't predict essentially, or I didn't spot. And so it makes more sense. I think the way Anne's done it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she's using can as like a modifier or auxiliary verb. You can also do it like this. Um, Chaining the verbs. We talked about this some last time.
Yep.
One thing I noticed is for prepositional phrases, you should have the preposition as the lead node, and that its noun should be the child of the preposition. So these are swapped.
Yep. I've just updated that on my side. That's definitely something that it's a mistake I've repeatedly made. So I should note down all of those. Um, so even, I mean, it's one of these things. So like down there, I've got it wrong. But then in this, like I love to throw boomerangs to myself. I've got the preposition right, I think. Well, I've got that in the right order at least.
Yeah. Okay, so find you can stuff more.
I think. Oh no, don't worry.
Okay, so there's a difference here.
I think I've missed some brackets there as well. I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how the which works. So what you want to note here, as we have this is, we have an actual finite verb. We have a whole nother clause here. So this merits like attention. Something's going on here. In your version, you just throw it in there. Oh, with the is as the lead of the tree.
Oh yeah. So
But
one thing that I sort of mentioned it above, but that really led me astray during this was using a dictionary that didn't so oh, I've uninstalled it, sorry. But yeah, so the dictionary that I ended up using had when which came up, I googled it and it's got the full definition. Another dictionary I tried had the full definition, but it just came up as pronoun in this one, and so I didn't question it too much, which meant that I had to put it somewhere like that because like Anne's not using it as a pronoun.
well, she's using it as what's called a relative pronoun, which is a stupid name, but that is what they call it. But a relative pronoun introduces a clause. So it has a conjunction aspect. They use relative. So it's like conjunction plus pronoun. And they call the conjunction part relative because it relates things together. Which is kind of a way of talking about conjoining things together as relating them together. But it would be better if they called it like a conjoining pronoun, for example.
That would be a little more intuitive.
So this is similar to the that we were dealing with previously. So you need a which after the is, like you have, to be the subject of the is. So which referring to stuff is the subject of is. So the clause means stuff is similar or related, which I think you understood. You've got you shouldn't have the brackets here, but
Around the or which, sorry, which part should I not have the brackets? Oh, is in the.
I guess it's here. What we want is that the is has two children.
Yeah, okay, yep. So as in the or is not under the which.
So yeah, that bracket. We want the
And the
or
second.
to be a sibling of which here.
Yeah.
So
Um
the which is the subject of the is, and the or is the object of the is. That makes sense to you? Or complement, not object?
um yeah, I think so.
So if you look at that as just if you look at that as a sentence in isolation, you get stuff is similar or related. And to simplify, we'll just drop the or part. So it's the basic concept here is stuff is similar. And when you look at that in isolation, the subject and complement should be easy to understand. Are you with me?
As in it's um the yeah, okay, yep. I see it. I think
Okay. So in isolation, this subtree makes sense. And then the question is, how do you connect it to stuff? Because you can't just throw is as a child of stuff. You can't put clauses in without some sort of connector or something.
Yep.
So yours is missing that, and Anne's was missing the this implied child, because which has a double role here. So she was missing the subject of is.
Similar to that
Yeah,
before.
so just like with the that, you can have you can just put the word which here. You can use it twice. Or there's other things you could put here. Such as subordinator. A thing which makes a subordinate clause which acts as an adverb or adjective.
Yep. If it's a subordinator, it's acting as a subordinating conjunction, right? What's it conjoining?
It's similar to one, and what it's conjoining is this bottom clause onto the sentence.
Okay, yep.
So,
oh yeah, yep. So in the same way that when if we use like after or things like that, um,
yeah,
as in, I mean, not that we could slot after in there, but yeah.
okay, so
Um,
for the word after, there's two different ways to think of it. The one you've been using primarily is that the word after is like the word and, but it has extra information as well. Oh.
yep.
After view 2 is function which takes a clause and outputs a modifier. So it's like a more powerful preposition. The preposition just takes a noun and outputs a modifier, but their idea is that subordinating conjunctions take an entire clause and output a modifier. So this view is pretty convenient when you're dealing with relative pronouns, like which. You can look at it as subordinator is a word for that, but you can look at it as it's taking this bottom clause and then it's outputting a modifier.
Yep.
You can also try to look at it as a conjunction, but it is inconvenient and difficult to do that in this particular case. So I
I sort
find
of
the
feel like
second view a lot more convenient here.
the way you'd have to do it is sort of by introducing a whole lot of implied uh stuff to represent the top half of the sentence.
Maybe. Yeah, so I just decided to use view 2 sometimes when it was inconvenient to use view 1. So that's how I deal with relative pronouns like this. However, in this one, as much as many people think that is a relative pronoun, in this one I think it's convenient to view it as a regular pronoun and do this particular thing, which I actually got straight out of a dictionary. I think it was this one. It was one of the older dictionaries, like the 1913 one, or possibly the older one. And they said that that's how the word that works. Maybe it's the old one. Here we go. Right, so they say in the following use, the word that has been called a conjunction, but the dictionary is explicitly disagreeing with that view and saying that it's actually a pronoun here. And they specifically, they show the semicolon conversion that I showed. So that's where I learned that idea. So that in 1828, people were resisting the view of switching it to be the relative pronoun special thing. But the dictionary no longer says this. But it still makes sense to me as a more principled way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that only works in certain cases with the word that. but like here, there's no convenient way to do that. So I just view the which as a clause preposition, a more powerful preposition that takes a clause and outputs a modifier.
Yep.
But I don't like to do that with subordinating conjunctions in general. That view makes them like more subordinate. It emphasizes that they're just a child and a modifier. And I think that that makes sense for a clause like this where it actually is just a modifier on stuff. Like the point of this clause is to give more info about stuff. So
Yep.
I think treating it as just a modifier is fair. But in a regular sentence, when you're like, I want to eat after school, or after I go to school, I think here, like, we have two clauses and they're both pretty important. This one is less important, but I still like to emphasize that it's a clause. So I prefer to view this as more of a conjunction and not diminish the second clause too much.
So it's if you can use it as a conjunction, do so, but otherwise, then this is the other
Yeah.
use.
I don't see
Yep.
this as like just a modifier, just like another adverb. I think it's a bit more than that, whereas this one actually is just kind of like an adverb
Yep.
or modifier. Okay, yeah. Do you have more grammar stuff to look at? Oh, there's another F5 post. This one.
Oh, this was the yeah, this was the one where I started collecting some stuff because so this was the last one in the chapter 2. Or sorry, part 2. It was the yeah, so I one of the ways that I reasoned about it, I'm not sure if this is actually valid, but I at the like the first line of the or the first sentence of the post is like of the same form that I used as a way to invalidate one of the, or at least is the way I read it.
Okay, so should I make a tree of this and see how I do it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, there's the sentence. Let's see what I can come up with. So this one was the one with lots of clauses on purpose.
Yeah, so there's 4 conjunctions and 5 clauses. Or that's
Yeah,
how everyone has read it, at least.
give some people something trickier to deal with. All right. So subordinate clause, while you sing subordinate clause. Main clause, it looks like coordinate clause, subordinate clause. All right, so we're going to start with the and because that's the coordinating conjunction. And then let's get the 2 clauses that go with the and written out, and then worry about the other stuff. So should you stamp modifier loudly. Let me know if anything you don't understand why I'm putting it there, or if you have any confusion or disagreements. Okay, so far?
Yep, yep.
All right, I'm going to write out the other clauses before I figure out where to put them. We're going to have after, row, you is the subject, and ball is the object. Have a, small, and red. 3 modifiers on ball. while thing, and this one is if is it is the subject, and then daytime is the object, and still a modifier on daytime. I think. I'm wondering if it's a modifier on is or a modifier on daytime. Let's look it up. Well, daytime is a noun, so if it's an adverb, it can't modify it. So I guess it's a modifier on is. I think that's what they're saying here. But here they have it before the verb. It was, oh, it comes after with the linking verb, apparently. Yeah, it still was raining, it was still raining. You can say it either way. Okay, so we're saying the relationship is still holding rather than the daylight is still. Continuing. So yeah, both make okay sense conceptually, but when I look up the parts of speech, then this one seems right. I'll move this still. Okay. So I've got the main part, and then I've got these three parts set up, and I just have to figure out where to put them. Make sense so far?
Yep.
All right. Is yours similar on the internal parts?
Some of it. I put the end down here, but I explain that at the bottom.
Okay, so this is the main clause, and then we want to link it to these other things. So the way you link with a subordinating conjunction in general is you put the main clause as the first child and the other clause as the second child. The and is not actually going to end up as the root, I think. The order doesn't matter too much. So these are all modifiers on this thing. So one way to do it is just to chain them. Like this. New. Now I have three things under after. That's not what I wanted. Oh right, so I can chain this as a modifier on that. No, let's go back. Let's make a separate tree. And look at only the core structure. So we're just gonna look at four things. It'll be like root. One way to do it is like after x, y. So the while either has to go here or the other one. So while x. We can just try looking at them. Does this make more sense or does this way make more sense?
No, that's how I I put the x first. Oh wait, no, I had the no, I had the while first. Sorry, yep.
They're both
So no,
subordinate clauses. Wait, so the standard with after is you have after, then you have the other clause, and then you have the after clause. So it should be this way, just to fit how I normally do it.
yep. No, I read it that way as well.
Okay, and then we can put the if, and then we can put the and then main clause 1, 2. So this overall structure is joining modifiers to the main thing, which also has other modifiers. I'm wondering if the after and the if should swap places to attach the after more closely to the and. I think it doesn't really matter. I don't. You could put it either way. This one's kind of convenient because it matches sentence order better. So I think I'll just leave it this way.
Yeah, okay. I had a differently balanced tree.
So now that I have that concept figured out, I can go back and figure out where I want to put things. I'm going to put the while as the first child of the after. I'm going to put the if as the first child of the while. And I'm going to put the and as the first child of the if. Now I've got a tree. So I think the method of making a simpler tree was helpful for figuring out what I wanted to do.
Yep, I used a similar technique but got a different result. But my like one of the things that it was ambiguous to me was I made the argument that we should go with the more specific thing. So I didn't actually go through the like 8 different cases of various commas, or actually more, I think you could do. But uh
Oh yeah, one
yeah,
thing I forgot to consider is whether whether everything applied to everything. Let's see what I said here. 5 applies to both 3 and 4. Both apply to both 3 and 4. Okay, it is everything applies to everything. I think there was debate about that though. If you thought that
there
like
was
one of the subordinate clauses didn't apply to one of the main clauses, then you'd want to structure your tree differently.
yep. So I sort of treated it like parentheticals for the commas. So if you read um like after you throw a small red ball while you sing, you should stamp your feet loudly and you should clap your hands if it's still daytime. Um, I couldn't sort of make it read any differently in my head. But yeah,
Okay, so you have if and then you have and second. Oh, if is and. Yeah, the is in the if part. Let's see. After, while, if. So yours. I don't like how it makes new trees down at the bottom. Okay, so you have after as the root, then you have while as the first child, and if as the second child. Then you have and there.
hmm
So your after What goes under after? After throw. Oh, so you made throw a child of while.
Yep.
So I think that is incorrect. Does that make sense? The throwing should be nested under after because it's part of that clause.
How do you uh oh well I guess if while was can we use while as a thing to make a subordinate clause? Like if we can do well no, you've got it as a conjunction here as well.
Right. If you treat it as a subordinator, it's still going to have as children its own stuff, the you sing.
Yep.
If you treat it as a subordinator, those will be its only children, will be the words in its clause, and then it will be the child of whatever it's modifying.
So it occurs to me maybe I have like the way I would read my tree is sort of like after you throw and then a small red ball um while you sing. So it's sort of got this like recursively traveling back up. I'm not sure if that's actually valid or not, or whether it's like that pattern is the right way to
I
do it.
don't I don't think that's right. So if you're going to use after as a conjunction, then its two children should be the two things it's joining together, and one of those two things should be its own clause. This part here, after you throw a small red ball, one of the two things after joined together should be you throw a small red ball. This is the clause that's clearly associated with after.
Okay, so
in the sentence.
I've definitely been too tolerant of where I can put things then.
Yeah, so the two choices are if after is a conjunction, then you can have it join this clause and a different clause. And I put the subordinate clause second as a standard pattern. So I would put the main clause under the after as the first child, and then the after's own clause would be the second child. And if you're treating it as a subordinator, then you would just have one clause under it, and then its parent would be the main clause that it's modifying. So I'll show that way as well. If we're doing it as subordinators, then we're going to have the and thing at the top. It's going to be the root. And then we're going to have this. This is the subordinator version.
Yep, where everything is modifying.
Yeah, so the and conjoins the two clauses, and then each of these takes
Like
its own
total
clause as a child and outputs a modifier that can modify the main group of clauses. This actually makes a reasonable structure in this case, because it's simpler than this structure, like there's less nesting.
Yep. Yep. Cool.
And
I think
having less nesting is actually nice because we didn't really want to nest these three things together.
Yep. Yep, no, cool. I think I've got yeah, enough information about where I've been going on grammar wise to know what to focus on to.
Yeah, I have one more thing to say about this because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, sure.
It's a little like functional programming versus imperative. So this one, the one with more nesting, is it's like doing after then while something y, if something z, and main one, main two. So you're getting like all these change function calls, and that's why we're getting a lot of nesting. And then the other one looks to me more like sentence equal main 1 plus main 2, sentence plus equal after, sentence plus equal while, sentence plus equal if. That's kind of how it reads. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Or instead of plus equal, it might be better to say like modify sentence after. So we're just going through, and it's kind of like using mutable state. Okay. So that was grammar. Did you work on something else? Overreaching
So
something?
just reading overreaching stuff. So there was some.
Okay.
I was basically just pulling out ideas that I liked at that stage, but I ended up just finding more things and then reading more and so on. One of the themes that I guess I didn't actually even quote all the stuff that I intended to, but so I didn't get very far with that. But particularly I went back and looked for stuff that then took more time. And part of that was I don't have the thing that you posted about the other day, like a link collecting sort of thing. I really need to organize that because it's pretty obvious when you don't have it, and you know you're missing it. Anyway, but like the
like
idea of
Pocket, do you mean?
yeah, this sort of idea though, I don't know. I mean, I guess I've been pulling out the stuff that represents thresholds. I feel like I'm either going through or coming up against or things like that. But this idea of like pursuing the not being unhappy with indirection, and realizing that things are part of the goal, even though they might not seem like it. I guess I don't know, but that's sort of I guess a bit of what I've been thinking about, among other things. There's a lot of stuff. I feel like I need to there's a lot of not able to put things down particularly well yet. So I actually started by just like writing down sort of thoughts and things, summarizing what you were saying and adding my other commentary. Well, that was the intention of starting, but yeah.
Okay. Did you have any particular questions?
Um, so not particularly, partially because I mean I don't think I've there's more information there than I've been able to go through the point of having questions. In that I'm
Okay.
still having questions answered by continuing to read. Nothing doesn't make sense though.
Okay, good. So what I'd like to try is taking some text and trying to make a tree from it. Send you a link. So number 3 is a good one, I think. So if you could get out Simple Mind or something and try to put this paragraph into a tree and figure out how that works. I think that would be good practice, and we'll see how hard or easy that is. And my main hint is do one node per clause. So knowing grammar stuff helps there. I think if you try to do one sentence per node, it's not going to work as well because sentences with multiple clauses are sort of combining two things together. So clause level analysis is a good detail level when you want to get pretty specific.
There you Okay. Because being accused of mental illness is similar to being accused of a crime, we ought to presume that psychiatric defendants are mentally competent, just as we presume that criminal defendants are legally innocent. Individuals charged with a criminal, civil, or interpersonal offence ought never to be treated as incompetent solely on the basis of the opinion of mental health experts. Incompetence ought to be a judicial determination by the accused, and the accused ought to have access to legal representation and the right to trial by jury. Okay. Um,
Yeah. So one of the things about this is you don't have to understand the content super well in order to figure out the tree. You do need to understand it somewhat to figure out how different parts connect to each other, but you don't have to like fully understand the content in order to understand the structure.
so what's the root of the tree that we're trying to construct? Like the topic in general or the conclusion, or just the dependencies between the clauses?
Yeah, try to find dependencies between clauses. So one way to think of it is part whole. You can find something that is a piece of something else that's helping build up to it, then you can make it a child of that thing.
So like oh, I'll just fix the um so oh sorry, that last thing you said in terms of making something a child of something else. What was that again?
Try to find relationships where something is helping build up to something else. Like it's one piece of it. So
So
like supporting comments or something that's more of the leader or the point.
just gonna so is this sort of at the right level or in the
I'd suggest one node per clause for everything.
so similar here. So
So
how are we gonna make clauses the um like children of other clauses? What's the rule sort of thing?
if one of the ideas is a building block for a different idea.
Okay, yeah.
So to start, you could grab all of the clauses as nodes and then work on arranging them.
I'm somewhat unclear about how many or so stuff like just as there.
Yeah, I would
Um,
just include that as a at the start of it, the clause.
um, so I'm unsure if this is like two clauses there that I'm sort of mixing together.
So look for verbs when you're trying to figure out where the clauses are. Each clause should have a verb and a subject. And conjunctions are also a good thing to look for.
Um,
Okay, there are some grammar errors, so you probably want to review more. And
Oh, you mean how I split it up, or in the
yeah,
original? Oh yeah, yeah. So I'm pretty sure
you're just
like
getting
that's
started. Okay.
yeah. I'm just trying to break it down at the moment. So and I've lost. Uh, um.
I also included the presumption of competence text as another node.
Okay. Yep. Um. So I think nouns, verb, uh, subjugate. Is it? Oh, subjugating conjugation. Is that
Subordinating.
term? Subordinating. That's it. Yep. Um.
Yep, so on this one we have a subordinating conjunction, and then we have a subject as being accused, verb is, and then it links to
The
similar.
other being accused.
It links to similar.
Oh.
And then to being is a
Oh.
modifier on
Yep.
similar.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Um.
Yeah, I see why you thought they were parallel because the being repeats. I thought that for a second, but then I was kept looking.
Oh well, the first thing I wasn't sure. Uh. Yeah, just where to break it up. It became pretty obvious. After I started with the rest of the ones. Just want to make sure I haven't lost any. So I think R is the verb. Um. I'm not sure about that, but the way they're sort of like psychiatric defendants are mentally competent, and then modified we ought to presume. Um. Is how it sort of feels, but that's not rigorous.
So this one, you could split it up or you could leave it together. I think it's convenient to leave it together, but no, it really works either way. You could split it at the that. There are two different verbs there. There's the ought and the are.
Yeah, I don't think it makes much sense in that it doesn't really give us any particular extra information. So right now, by the way, what I'm doing is I'm just going through and actually checking that I've like checking the verbs in each one, um, particularly because that should give us information about um, what's where. I mean, we can sort of do that to start with. Um,
Yeah, so that one is a reason for the other one. So that's a good parent-child relationship.
so this is this whole thing here acting as a verb? No, we've got verb, noun. That's a
Yeah, the to be is an infinitive.
yeah. So I'm not sure if this actually has
Well, so what verbs do you see in the blue one?
so oh, I've got to remember. This is uh Yeah. So it's sort of like so to be is a noun. Never is a modifier.
Yep.
So so the two things here. So we've got like what never be treated as incompetent is one sort of thing, and then this is almost like a condition on that.
Yep. Solely is a modifier. The word solely by itself. Adverb, not involving anyone or anything else, only.
Um,
And then the
what is
stuff
like
after solely, we have on the basis of the opinion of. So those are all prepositional phrases.
yep. So the
So it's
entire
just
thing
a
is a
bunch of modifiers.
Yep, which is they're just they're acting on solely, right? Or no, well solely's.
The first one's acting on solely. Um,
Oh, and as
then
in this
of
is
the opinion is acting on basis.
yep. Um,
And then of
this
the mental health experts is acting on opinion.
I'm just gonna pull it up for clarity's sake. That doesn't
Okay.
really feel um this doesn't feel right unless we like made ought never to be something bigger.
Okay, so hold on. So what's the verb here?
As, right?
Uh,
Sure.
what do you think would be the subject of as?
So the treatment um and the object is incompetent. Um but that leaves this stuff at the beginning. So is ought
Yeah. So as is not a verb at all.
oh no, because it's a determinant. No, it's not.
It's an adverb, conjunction, or preposition.
Um
So it's modifier or joiner of some sort.
can never be a verb. Can't, but ought.
Nope.
Okay. So is the subject of ought can it be never? Um
Subjects are almost always going to be before the verb.
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, so if you look at the green one, where's the verb?
Um
With has a modifier role here. It's telling us about the type of charges. So this part is all a modifier.
yep. Um so there's no verb in this section. Um
Correct. So charged might look like a verb,
but it's not
but
because it's a verbal participle. Is it?
yep,
Cool.
yep.
So
It's playing an adjective role here to tell us about the individuals, what type of individuals they are.
um So in terms of breaking that down, that feels better.
Yep. So now you've got the subject in the verb and the rest.
So incompetence is the subject, then to be a judicial determination is the object, and ought is the verb again. Accused and to have. To have a infinitive? Yes.
Yep, to have object of ought.
Is there so my theory at the moment is it's an implied word missing here because we've got by jury, this prepositional phase becomes a modifier on the trial. To is unless to can be a verb. It's an adverb. Trial might be a verb, but no trial because the jury's except this is a
So
and the accused.
And does not always join clauses. It can also join smaller things. So it doesn't
Oh, I
necessarily have
remember.
to be
Yeah,
a clause
it can
there.
join phrases. Yep. So
That's why you're not finding a verb there.
yeah. So a right is joined to trial by jury. Is that no? So trial feels like the only, but I don't think well.
Look at the whole sentence and see if there's anything else that might be relevant.
So
Yep. They are supposed to have. Wait. You're thinking that they're supposed to have access to two things. Number one, legal representation, and number two, a right to trial by jury.
yeah, I mean it's sort of somewhat contradictory because a right and then access are on the same sort of thing. So the alternative way of doing it would be to have something implicit there from the like the accused ought to have access to legal representation and ought to have a right or ought to a right ought to have a right to trial by jury.
Yes, you can look at different places to do the grouping. So we have this and here. We can figure out what does it group on the left and what does it group on the right. The right is easy, it's everything. And on the left, you can try different things, like if you just try representation. So access to legal, and then two things. One, representation, and two, a right to a trial by jury. And that doesn't make sense.
Because yeah, obviously legal is modifying the representation. So
right. So then you go back another one. And we have
Access to noun and noun.
a right. Access to a right is confusing. That doesn't seem quite right. So we go back again. We have access a right, to have access a right. No, that's not grammatical. So we go back again. We got ought to have, number one, access to a legal representation, and number two, ought to have a right to trial by jury. So now we actually have groups that both work after have. So group one and group two, and have can apply to each of those things, and it works out okay.
Yep.
So you can just try all the possibilities until one of them makes sense. And you can actually go back further and say ought number one to have access, and ought number two a right. But then that didn't work, like ought a right.
Yeah, no, yeah. So
the accused is a subject, then it's ought to have, and then it's two different things.
Yep. No, I think I've got it. Yep. So in terms of the things that go missing, or I can't remember the omitted, what are they called? The
Implied
virtual
words.
type implied word, that's it. So it'd be like, and the accused ought to have access to legal representation, and the accused ought to have access to a right to trial by jury.
Yeah,
Is
you
that
can read it
that's
that
the full
way.
expansion?
Reading it with implied words is fine. You will understand it, and you're not wrong. But you don't have to have the implied words. They're optional. Because you can just look at it as ought to have, and then the child of this is an and then the child of that is the two different things. So they're both coming directly after the ought to have. So these words do apply to both of them, but you don't need them twice in the sentence for them to apply to both things. It's not like the author left words out, is what I mean.
Yep. So in terms of the presumption of competence, it feels like it's sort of similar to the way a colon would be there, but sort of talking about the entire thing.
Yep. So that's the topic he's going to talk about. It works well as the root. Everything
So
else has something to do with it.
now, yeah, we put so just to figure out dependency order. So the more foundational stuff goes at the bottom, which means that we're ultimately this is our conclusion. So it's going to be, or possibly a few things, but the conclusions are going to be right at the top, and the reasons are going to be below them. But they're not all fitting neatly into that. So like, oh well, that of course that doesn't work. So the reason I'm doing that is just because it follows on, but it sort of goes counter to what we've done over there on the left.
Okay, so let's pick a node and try to think about why is he saying it. Like, when he says, just as we presume that criminal defendants are legally innocent,
So
what's the reason that he's including that? What does it help him do?
Because it's already it's common ground with the people who are reading it. Everyone who's reading it agrees on the idea that like innocent until proven guilty. And so by relating these other ideas to it, he's able to build up the right hand half of the thing. So
Yeah.
if we had something like this, then I mean, like
I
my sort of
agreed
feeling.
with those comments you made. So
Mhm.
two of the things I heard you say are that it's common ground with the audience, that it helps build up an argument, and both of those suggest that it is more of a premise than a conclusion. So it should be low in the tree and help build up to something,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Does that
So
make sense?
yeah, as in this ultimately, this as a group is now supporting. Actually, I can use what do you call it? Oh, this is the that thing. Oh, that's big. But yeah, so this is like a group that's ultimately supporting the combination of everything over there.
I just
So
meant the just as node. So what is the just as node specifically trying to help establish?
so that's the common ground. So we're comparing something to a thing we both agree on.
Right, and
Um,
what does it argue for or lead to?
so the one right below it. Um,
Like, is it a reason for something?
um, it's a reason that we ought to presume that. Well, no, is it? It's not that. It's not that reason. It's a reason for the right to trial, really. Or incompetent, like something on this side. Um, um,
Um, is there something you could say like X because Y and then use that node in that?
oh, whoops. I'm just gonna move them over here. Yeah, okay. So this is another supporting thing over here, or it's no. Um, okay. So we presume that people are legally innocent, and this combines with the idea of judicial stuff to give us a conclusion here. This over here is the counterpoint that he's trying to argue essentially by the similarity here. Um, this is then the justifying or the reason for that similarity's validity. So um, so um, I don't know if that's more relevant, but I'm not sure it actually really matters. Um, so this is, I think, our. All right. So let to just make sense. So similarity from mental illness to a crime, treatment of crime, conclusion of, or rather, relationship between um, the sort of who gets to make the decision. So the judicial. Yeah, okay. So if we take like this little subtree here, um, this is a thing we take for granted. The importance of like a judicial determination. This is a thing we take for, well, we take for granted is not the right word, but it's common ground. Um, this is the big sort of common ground sum of all that, that being the things that actually matter day to day. Um, in terms of causality, we're saying here's legal stuff, similarity, um, if I take this, this is, because this is sort of two nodes, I think it's making it messier than it needs to be. The alternate thing, so I'm somewhat unclear of whether, like, the incompetent should go above the legal representation. But I'm not sure if I'm just being confused by the fact it's a thing that needs another thing in front of it to make sense because I've included the end. But I don't know why we can't just make them the same thing essentially. In that, well, I mean, if we make them the same thing, then we're not breaking down the ideas.
I've
This
got
thing
a
though,
brief for this. We can compare when you're ready.
so one of the things I was thinking about earlier was just how I would go from the start of like, so from here, it'd be like, oh gosh. So it's like, so I'm not sure I'm going to get much better than that.
Okay. Here's what I've got, and I'll walk through it. So, first node we agree on for sure. Presumption of competence, that is the topic that we're going to talk about. So then, big idea. We ought to presume that psychiatric defendants are mentally competent. This is basically a statement of the topic. We ought to presume competence. That is his point related to presumption of competence.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what are his reasons for this? Reason number one, being accused of mental illness is similar to being accused of a crime. That is a reason that we should presume competence. it's a bit of a partial reason by itself, but it's trying to argue that this presumption is good because if you don't presume it, it's similar to accusing people of crimes or presuming that they're criminals.
Yep. It's an error in thought in the same vein is sort of the
All right. Then reason number 2, we presume criminal defendants are legally innocent, and this is a similar issue. So we do this other thing that's very similar. So we should do it in the psychiatric case also. So that is also a reason for presuming competence, is in order to mirror what we do with criminal defendants, where we presume innocence.
Yep.
Then reason number 3, individuals charged with stuff should never be treated as incompetent just on the basis of the opinion of mental health experts. Okay, this isn't quite a reason, but this is a further
like
claim or elaboration.
Yep. Like another fact about the world that we're going to use to build up the case.
Yeah, so if you agree with this, it helps you agree with the parent. It's like a sub-point about a particular way people do presumptions, which is they presume that these mental health experts, if they say someone is mentally ill, then a lot of people just sort of believe them. So this, when we do that, we're violating the presumption of mental competence. It would be just like if we asked a prestigious lawyer, is this guy guilty? And he said, oh yeah, I talked to him, he's totally guilty. We said, oh, well, he's a legal expert, let's presume now that he's guilty. Okay, and then as subpoints of this one, he says, incompetence ought to be a judicial determination. So this is arguing against that idea. He's saying instead of a psychiatrist determination, it should be a judicial determination. It should be something the courts deal with instead of psychiatrists getting to just declare it. And he has this other point, which is the accused ought to have access to legal representation and a right to a trial by jury. So again, he's arguing with the power of psychiatrists by saying that that conflicts with these things people see the value in, which is legal representation and jury trial.
Yep.
When a psychiatrist is judging you, you don't have a lawyer present arguing back, and you don't have a jury. Because he's not a jury, he's not a legal process where lawyers argue it out, and you have your side represented. He's like judge, jury, and executioner.
Yep.
So that's how I organized it. Does that generally make sense?
Yeah, we've got, so one of the things, so clause 3 is partially it's like a conclusion in the sense that it needs support.
Yes.
Then 6 and 7, I mean, I guess 6 you could argue is a bit more general, but 7 is well, in this case 6 and 7 both refer to the like people being accused of mental illness as opposed to crime. So it feels like we've got conclusions at the top and bottom, essentially. But I'm wondering whether 6 and 7 they're not really conclusions at all.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so this is an assertion. When you just read it straight up, you're like, he's asserting something.
Yep.
And then this one also is an assertion. We have an assertion at the top and an assertion at the bottom. What's the difference? This is the assertion that he's trying to argue for and makes other statements to back it up and try to explain why we should believe it. It's the one that he figures his audience might disagree with, and he's trying to tell them, hey, I've got this idea, here's why it's a good idea, and he's trying to get them on board with it.
I mean, sort of presuming that 6 and 7 are things they're not going to disagree with, and so they can be
Right.
foundational.
These are things he's hoping that maybe you already agree with and he doesn't have to argue about it a bunch. So he's trying to use them as reasons for something else, as building blocks.
Yeah, one thing, like, if 4 goes away, uh, like 4 feels foundational in the sense that uh, it's like it's a big link between the. It's necessary. I feel like if you took 4 away, you couldn't just say, 5, 6, 7. And 2 feels a bit lonely.
Yeah, a lot of his point is to try to link how we treat criminals and the protections we give them to how we treat the allegedly mentally ill and the protections we deny them.
Yeah.
And he wants those people to have protections like getting dealt with by judges and having a presumption of mental innocence.
Yep.
Okay, so overall that seemed a bit hard for you, but
Yeah.
I wanted to try it to connect the idea trees and the grammar and so on to analyzing real arguments. Like this is an actual good thinker writing something important. And so this tree is bridging the gap between text from a serious thinker to the small things we've been doing, the tools that are trying to build up to dealing with big ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Um, I'm not necessarily convinced on the tree structure. Um, then again, I'm definitely not convinced by mine, so I don't have like another option. Um,
There isn't a single right answer that's just this is clearly perfect. What we're trying to do here is organize it in a useful, effective way. Some trees make more sense than others. We want to have a good one that helps us understand it. We want to keep in mind the purpose when we're making a tree. Like, are we trying to understand his arguments more? Or, uh, like, is there something that was confusing us, so we're trying to work it out by breaking it into parts and analyzing more? And you only have to make your tree good enough to accomplish your purpose or your goal. So rather than looking for like the perfect answer that would be graded correct on a test, you're trying to organize it enough that you understand it well enough that you can move on, or organize it enough that you can communicate it to someone else so they understand it well enough, or something like that. Like, which is the same as communication and purpose. Communication in general in English, the goal is not perfection. The goal is make it make enough sense that you understand yourself or the other guy understands you or something like that. Like there's many ways to say the same thing that are all okay. And you can argue like one's a bit better than another. But the important thing is there some sort of major problem with this? Is there a deal breaker? Is there a reason that if we do it this way, we're going to be stuck or fail? And if you have no problems like that, then it's good enough and you can try to optimize something else. It doesn't need to be better.
Yep. Yep. No, I agree with that.
Okay. So there aren't like super clear mechanical rules for exactly where to put everything. It's just you're trying to help yourself think through it. Or show it to others.
Hmm.
One of the things you can do if you're trying to talk with someone else is you can both make your tree and then you can compare. And you'll find some ways that your trees are different are like reasonably superficial and you're like, okay, I see why you did it that way. Instead, you've got a similar concept of how you're understanding it, it's not that big a deal. Then some ways they do it, you're like, oh, I completely disagree with that. Like, I think that's actually wrong, and like we have a major disagreement there. So it can help you identify disagreements. And because a lot of times people will both read the same paragraph and they seem to get completely different ideas of what it says, or they're just not on the same page at all. So if you make a tree like this and the other guy makes a tree and you compare, it's going to help you figure out where you're not on the same page, what exactly is going on there, so that you're not just like pointing at it and saying, oh, it's obvious what it means. Like, you can communicate in more detail what you're thinking and how you break things down.
Yeah. One thing that occurs to me is if people have different explanations for how they break down trees, um, it feels like they shouldn't be able to communicate well on that basis, though. I mean, I guess it gives them a point to start off because they can actually compare something. So they can take, and they can find the bits that are the same in the tree, for example, as potential common ground. Um, but I guess that's like a methodological issue as well, and so sorting that out becomes the primary uh, priority because without that, you can't actually figure out whether you agree or not in any case.
Yeah, it's important to try to figure out what he's doing and what you're doing and compare them and form an opinion. Like, is his thing reasonable and compatible with reaching the correct answer? Or is his thing like unreasonable and it's causing him to get the wrong answer? Like, is the problem in his method, or is his method okay, and if he just applied his own method correctly, he would have reached the same answer as you? You can look at things like that to help you figure out where to argue.
Yep, yep. Yeah, so obviously, yeah, if one of the people can figure out what the other one's thinking, then that gives them, well, you immediately open up, yeah, massive surface to of common ground now, comparatively. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so time to wrap up. For next time, I think you can just work on more grammar and continuing the stuff you're reading. Does that sound good?
Yeah, no, that's I think that's the plan. Oops, there's a bunch of, yeah, I know what I need to practice grammar wise. I think, or at least close enough to. Um, yeah. Yep. All right. Cool.
All right, GG, bye.
See you next time.